All right, let's dive into one of the most important parts of the U.S. justice system, the Fifth Amendment. We're going to unpack the key clauses that really act as a shield, protecting every single person from the massive power of the government. So let's get right to it.
You've seen it on TV a million times, right? Some character is on the witness stand, the lawyer is bearing down, and they say, "I plead the fifth." But what are they actually doing? What does that phrase really mean? Well, that's exactly what we're going to break down.
And there it is. That famous phrase comes straight from this line in the Fifth Amendment, the right against self-incrimination. But here's the thing. As we're about to see, that's just one of several really powerful protections the amendment gives to anyone who finds themselves caught up in the justice system. Okay, so let's start at the very beginning of how a serious federal case gets going. Before a prosecutor can even think about taking you to trial, they have to get past a really important first hurdle. And that hurdle is the grand jury. Now, this is not the jury you see in a courtroom drama. A grand jury doesn't decide if someone is guilty or innocent. Nope. It's a group of regular citizens who listen to the prosecutor's evidence behind closed doors. Their only job is to decide if there's enough evidence, enough probable cause, to even justify a trial in the first place. It's supposed to be a check on a prosecutor's power.
What's really fascinating is how people have viewed the grand jury over the centuries. It actually started out as a sword for the King of England, a tool to enforce his laws. But the framers of the U.S. Constitution, they saw it totally differently. They turned it into a shield to protect people from the government. But today, well, a lot of people are questioning whether it's still much of a shield at all.
This famous line from a judge really just says it all, doesn't it? It perfectly captures the modern criticism. The argument is that since prosecutors are the only ones presenting evidence, they have total control. And because of that, critics say the grand jury has basically become a rubber stamp that will approve almost any charge a prosecutor brings. It really makes you think about how much power is in one person's hands.
And that whole concern about the government having too much power, it leads us directly to the next protection. So, let's say a case does get past the grand jury and goes to trial. The Fifth Amendment has another massive safeguard built in. It makes sure the government doesn't get to just keep trying you over and over again until they get the result they want.
The thinking behind this is just basic fairness. I mean, the government has practically unlimited money, time, and people. This rule prevents the state from using all that power to just wear someone down, dragging them through trial after trial for the very same crime after they've already been found not guilty. So when exactly does this protection kick in? Well, the law is super specific about it. The second that jury is picked and they all take the oath, that's it. From that moment forward, the defendant is officially in jeopardy, and that rule against being tried twice for the same crime is in full effect. But, and this is a big but, there's a major exception to this rule. It's called the dual sovereignty doctrine. Basically, the state government and the federal government are seen as two separate sovereign powers. That means a single action can actually break both a state law and a federal law. And if that happens, you can be tried twice. This is exactly what we saw in the famous Rodney King beating case. And that brings us right back to where we started, the right against self-incrimination. This is the absolute heart of pleading the fifth. And how we understand it today was shaped by one of the most well-known Supreme Court cases in all of American history. So at its core, the right is simple. In your own criminal trial, nobody can force you to get on that witness stand and testify. And just as important, if you choose to stay silent, the prosecutor can't turn around and tell the jury, see, they must be guilty. But this right actually goes way beyond the courtroom itself. So that begs the question, right? What about during a police interrogation? That's where the story of Ernesto Miranda comes in. He was arrested and confessed after hours of questioning, but he was never told he had a right to a lawyer or a right to stay quiet. The Supreme Court's decision didn't just overturn his conviction, it completely changed the rules of policing in America. That Miranda case is the whole reason that police now have to read you these specific rights, what we all call the Miranda warnings, before they can question you in custody. The whole idea is to balance the scales a bit, to counteract the pressure of a police interrogation and make sure any statement someone gives is actually voluntary. But you have to remember how controversial this was. This was not some unanimous slam dunk decision by the Supreme Court. It was a razor-thin 5-4 vote that created the Miranda warnings. That really shows you just how intense the debate was, and still is, over where to draw the line between police power and a person's individual rights.
Okay, so all of these specific protections we've been talking about, the grand jury, double jeopardy, the right to remain silent, they're all like pillars, and they're all standing on one huge ancient foundation that's also found right there in the Fifth Amendment. This is the Due Process Clause, and it's really the ultimate promise that the government has to play by the rules. It means the government can't just act on a whim. It has to follow established laws and procedures. And believe it or not, the idea goes back hundreds of years, all the way to the Magna Carta in 1215 and its promise of the law of the land. Now, legal scholars usually break due process down into two parts. Think of it like this. Procedural due process is about the how. It asks if the government followed fair steps. Did you get proper notice? Did you get a chance to tell your side of the story? Substantive due process is about the what. It asks a much deeper question. Is the law itself fair, or does it violate some fundamental right that we all have? So let's pull all of this together. We've got these rights written down centuries ago. What does all of this mean for us, right now, in the world we live in today? Here's the most important takeaway. These aren't just a random list of rules. They all work together. They form a comprehensive shield that protects a person from the very start of an investigation all the way to the final verdict. The whole point of the Fifth Amendment is to make sure the entire process is fair and respects the individual when they're up against the incredible power of the state. And that leaves us with a really critical question for our time. With technology creating all these new ways for the government to investigate us and gather our data, how will these old rights hold up? Are the protections that were designed for the 18th century really strong enough for the challenges of the 21st? That's something we all really need to be thinking about.